G'day people, I'm Sharon and welcome. Today I'm looking at the basic controls on Janome's top of the line CM17. Big thanks to my friend Kathryn who has loaned me her machine for these tutorials. Turning the machine on. You can see it takes a little while to boot up. First thing to know, this is where the open button is for opening the lid of the machine. I've got information on this screen. It is information that is also available on the main screen. I'm on a straight stitch at the moment, and this would normally be the width of a stitch. In this case, because it's a straight stitch, it's actually showing needle drop position. This is stitch length, which is how far along the fabric moves with each stitch. This is tension. It's usually somewhere around 3 or 4. This is currently, you can see the dots that are showing that these are on their default settings. And this is 6 for the foot pressing on the fabric. So how hard the foot is pressing on the fabric. You do vary that depending on what kind of fabric you're working on. Stretchy fabrics, if you push on them too hard, you will stretch them while you're sewing. This is sort of greyed out because it's to do with using an even feed foot, and we don't have one on the machine. Everything is able to be set back to default settings by pressing that, but they're all default at the moment anyway. Default settings on your machine are the ones that Janome assumes you will want to use. They are usually pretty good. That means that if you're doing a decorative stitch, it knows how far along it needs to stitch with each stitch in order to make it look good. It knows how wide to make it to look good. You still have control over it. So any of the stitches on these machines, you can change them, you can change the width, you can change the length. However, you probably won't want to in most cases. There are times when you will want to and you have full control, but most of the time the default settings are pretty good. I can lock the machine from here or unlock it. These are the knobs for the width and length of the stitch. So I'm on a straight stitch here. If I move the width, I am actually moving the needle right or left. If I move the stitch length, I'm going to be moving the length here. I can do it by using the plus and minus. It is slower using the plus and minus than it is using the knobs. If I want to go back to the default settings, just touch default. The buttons that we have here are basic buttons that you will find on most Janome electronic machines. Not all, but most. This is a toggle switch for a needle up-down. If the needle is in the up position and I touch it, it goes to the down position. When I touch it again, it comes back to the up position. On this machine, I think it defaults to the down position, so when you stop, the machine will always want to stop with the needle in the down position. Scissors. The scissors will not work if the foot is up, but that doesn't matter because the machine will put it down itself. There will be times when it will not want to do it, and you can tell that because the light next to the button will not be on. This is the electronic foot lifter. When I press it, it's just put the foot down, and now it's put it up. If the foot is in the electronic up position, the manual lifter does not work. So if you're trying to get the foot to come down and you're using the lever at the back for putting the foot down and it's not working, you need to use this first. This is the reverse key on the machine, so it's an upside down U. As long as you are sewing and you are on the utility stitches, basically the zigzag and straight stitch, If you hold that in, as long as you are holding it in, the machine will go backwards. If you are sewing a decorative stitch and you touch the lock stitch key, the machine will continue sewing to the end of the pattern and then it will lock off. Sometimes we want designs to lock off now. Don't wait for the end of the pattern. And to get that to happen, you touch the reverse key. It will not sew to the end of the pattern and it will not sew reverse. It will lock off immediately. This is the lock stitch button. While you're sewing along on straight and zigzag stitches, when you press the lock stitch, the machine will immediately do several stitches in the one spot and lock off. When that has been finished, that's when you would usually do a thread cut. You may want to do a thread cut at a point when you haven't done that, but most of the time after doing a lock stitch you'll do a thread cut. Be aware that the thread cutter is not to be used on specialty threads. It is for use on regular sewing threads and regular embroidery threads. So if you've got a metallic thread or a specialty thread of some other description, which will be much thicker, don't use the thread cutter. If you do, in the same way that a knife will get nicks out of its blade if it tries to cut through metal, you will get nicks out of the thread cutting blade in your machine. So keep it for use on regular sewing and embroidery threads. You can see at the moment that there is no light. This is the needle threader button. There is no light on it, so if I try to press it at the moment, it's going to say, ahem, not good enough, I want to be locked before you can use me. So I would have to lock it and then the light comes on. My start-stop button can be used for sewing. With the foot control removed, if this is green, you hold the button in and the machine will go slowly until you let it out, and then it will run depending on this slider, how fast it will go. When you get towards the end of what you want to do, you push it in again and the machine will sew slowly until you let it out, at which point it stops. This slider is a speed limiter. When I have it over to the left, it doesn't matter how hard I put my foot down, I can have it all the way down to the floor, the machine will not run fast. It will also slow the machine down if it is in embroidery mode. When it is over fully to the right, then the machine will sew much more quickly. So that's all the information and easily available things that are on the front of your machine. On the main screen, we are in sewing mode. We can do utility stitches, which are the stitches here, but there are one of 2 pages, so going over the page will show me the rest of the utility stitches. Generally, utility stitches are the things that you will want to use if you are doing dressmaking. So it includes things like picket edgings and blind hem stitches and some variations on a kind of overlocking stitch, but mostly we're looking at your straight stitch that starts and ends with a few stitches forwards and backwards, the straight stitch that starts and ends with a lock stitch, a straight stitch in the far left position, which you can do manually yourself. This one looks like it's 3 rows of stitching. It is in fact a triple strength stitch where the machine goes forward, back, forward, forward, back, forward, forward, back, forward. It's an awful thing to undo. This one is a lightning stitch that you can use for stretchy fabrics if you like, and it's in the middle of the foot. This is a lightning stitch on the left. This is a basting stitch. We have got a couple of different zigzags. one that is middle justified and one that is right justified, but they're quite small ones. There's a 3-step zigzag. There are the things here that you may want to use when you are doing dressmaking. From the utility stitches, it's easy for me to get into buttonholes. I would recommend the number 1 buttonhole is actually probably the most functional buttonhole of these. This one looks really pretty. It's an antique hand style buttonhole. It's not very sturdy. This one's for doing a bound buttonhole. This is for sewing your buttons on, and it's very useful. These are the bar tacks that you could put at the slits in skirts to stop them from tearing. Bar tacks for jeans, things like that. And we have a few eyelets as well that come into the buttonhole area. In the bottom left of the part of the machine that is showing us what a stitch looks like is an indicator of which foot the machine expects to be used for that stitch. In the row of tabs above the utility and buttonhole, you can see a decorative stitch. We are now looking at applique stitches. There are cross stitches. There are heirloom stitches, there are quilting stitches, all sorts of things, and quilt style stitches, all kinds of things you can do in here. There are so many of them, in fact, that it can be quite confusing and difficult to find the things that you want. There are a bunch of little cards that sit in a pocket in the back of the machine that help you to find things. In addition to this row, we keep going. Satin stitches, bridging stitches, decorative, botanical, long, all kinds of things, and they're fun. In addition to these sorts of stitches, we have an alphabet. Now this is not the same as an alphabet in the embroidery mode of the machine. This is a narrow stitched alphabet that I will sometimes apply somebody's name or a size to a garment with this. It's very quick to do, and it just, if you're watching here, this is exactly what will stitch out. So it would stitch out my name onto the tape. So my tape would be going into the machine like that, and my name would be stitched on it. I can then put that piece of tape into the back of a garment, perhaps as a way for you to work out which child a garment belongs to. Block is your basic standard font. Script, I usually find these kinds of things get too flowery, and what I'm trying to do with this kind of lettering doesn't need flowery. Block is probably the one that I will use most often. Broadway is going to take a lot longer to stitch out. There are bigger ones, so if I now put my name in again in the 9mm one, you can see that that's a wider stitching, and it's just going to stitch straight out. I think that's probably 7mm and that's 9mm. We've got a Cyrillic alphabet and some symbols, so if you're wanting to do a few things that are a bit more fun on your label, maybe you're doing a label for somebody who is into music, so you'll put some musical notes before their name and after their name. The final area up here, we've got tapering. Tapering will allow you at the beginning and end of rows of stitching to start off small, work out to the size of the design that you want to do, and then go back in at the other end. You can use it to do mitering of corners in satin stitch. Down at the bottom you'll see something that almost looks like an old-fashioned computer card. It is a menu. It will show you all of the designs that are available on the regular part of the sewing machine. You can work your way through page by page, and if you find a design that you would like to do, touch that design, and the machine will take you straight to it. This has been a very short introduction to finding your way around the screens on the Janome CM17. It's a lovely machine, and I am so grateful to Kathryn for letting me use her machine. See you next time.